Let's now proceed to the first keynote speech, and it is a great pleasure for me, Professor Jørgen Ørstrøm, to present you here at this conference. And I can tell you all that Professor Jørgen Ørstrøm is living in Singapore, where he's a visiting senior research fellow at the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies. He's also an distinguished adjunct professor at Singapore Management University, and he's also an adjunct professor at Copenhagen Business School, also located here in Copenhagen. And last but not least, he is an honorary alumni at the University of Copenhagen. He comes from Denmark. He has a career here from Denmark, and after you enjoy, I presume, your otium by writing a lot of books. And one of the books that you have written, and which is very interesting, I think, is How Can Asia Shape the World from the Era of Plenty to the Era of Scarcities. But we have invited Jørgen Ørstrøm here today to give us a keynote speech that is called The Education System, What to Do. And we are very eager to hear what we are going to do. So please take the podium, Jørgen.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'll use this microphone. So at the back of the room, if you can't hear me, please signal, so then I'll change to the other microphone. But I'll start with my family, because in the future, those who are near to you are actually very important for you to cope with challenges. I am 72 years old. Every morning, my wife tells me that I look 10 years younger, as one who is 62 years old. The point of this is, in the future, ladies and gentlemen, you need confidence to meet the challenges and the changes every day. If you don't have the confidence, you'll fail. My son, who is 38 years old, his favorite movie is Back to the Future. The point in this is, you can't tackle the future without knowing what is behind you and what we are building on, the history, the experience. So you need to know the past to cope with the future. My daughter, who is soon 32 years old, she lives in London, where she works for an American company called Script Networks International. Some of you may know about this company. Every time I meet her, I ask her, Ivy, what are you actually doing in the company? She looks at me and gets a very tired expression on her face, where after she says, Dad, stop it. You won't understand anyway. That's also the future, that things are moving so fast that there are a lot of things you won't understand. But you know, I rise to the occasion, because next time I meet her, I ask the question again. I don't give up, because I know the future is there as a challenge, and you had to meet it head on. Let's move on. How does the future look? The world is about changing. We have heard that so many times. It's a cliche. But the point in this is, it is about human beings interacting with technology. This is the future. Technology is tools we use in our daily life, and these tools change all the time. And if you're not prepared to understand that and see how you can use the tools, what do you need to know to handle and manage the new tools, you won't be able to use them. Competences must be built all the time because the tools change. So the competence you needed when I was young and handsome, and actually I have been young, and somebody also said that I have been handsome. But when I was young and handsome, you have a fixed line phone. Today you have a smartphone or whatever it is called. The way to manage these two communication systems is completely different. It calls for a different competence. To do that, you need to move into lifelong learning from the moment you are born to the moment you die. Upgrade your competences all the time. Do not ever stop, because the tools do not stop. Technology does not stop. And the education system must provide the skills needed several decades ahead. I have written there why and how. Obviously, the answer to that is that people you send out from the education system today are going to work for 10, 20, 30 years. And you cannot give them today's technology, today's competences, because then they will be lost. They won't need them in the future. If you train somebody to be a shipyard worker, that somebody cannot turn into an information technology specialist or to work in biotechnology. We must have to integrate education more with society. I always tell my students at Singapore Management University, technology is not interesting in itself. What matters is how you can apply it in society. How do you integrate it in society? How open is society? How malleable is society? How receptive is society to integrate new technology so that we can apply the new technology? The productivity embedded in new technology then depends on two things: the competences of the human beings and how easily adaptable, malleable the society is to accommodate the new society. We must have a social contract in society with business, the public sector, and the education system, where we actually see how can they interact with each other, how can they share the benefits, how can they distribute the burden. We cannot live with these three sectors independent of each other. If we do so, society comes to a stop, a standstill. So a social contract with sharing of benefits and costs and burdens is necessary, and no silo thinking. We cannot do like this, we do need to do like that. In the industrial society, which have been dead for some decades, it was about silo thinking. You had to build your competences in a very narrow range to improve them all the time, but in a narrow range. To be a better shipyard worker, to be a better school teacher, to be a better scientist, and I don't know what. Today, it is about mixing things, combining things, putting things together, understanding what is happening in other sectors to get the most out of the new technology. This is a list of jobs that will be extinct by 2030. Utility company engineers, taxi drivers, Some teachers will be replaced by online courses, travel agents, air traffic controllers, bookkeepers, accountants, interpreters, newspaper reporters. The common denominator is these jobs are built on repetitive tasks. You do the same again and again and again. You can do it a little bit better, a little bit faster. You can maybe have a little bit higher productivity, but basically it's repetitive tasks, and they are out. Factual tasks, repetitive tasks will not be important in the future. These are a list of jobs that will dominate, according to this particular guy, the future in 2030. Aquaponics fish farmer. You combine seafood with agriculture. Garbage designer, because we live in a society where there will be more and more and more waste, and waste becomes precious because we move into an era of scarcities. Healthcare navigator. How do we actually find out to make people healthy in the future? Nostalgist. Appeal to imagination, fantasy, rewilder, rediscover the nature. Robot counselor. We need a robot. How do we actually manage the robot? Solar technology expert. The sun is there. Okay, let's use it. And telesurgeon. Now, these are about contact between human beings. It is about contact with nature. Two of the most dangerous trends we see in the world today is dehumanization and denaturalization. We do not care very much about other human beings, and we cut the link to them, and we can do that because of information technology. We have forgotten completely the cycles of nature. Very few of us have actually any contact to nature anymore. I guarantee you that a large number of young people, when they eat a chicken, they think that it is an industrial product. They have no idea that it comes from nature. And it's about imagination, appealing to our fantasy, mobilizing our resources. These are the main things in this list of new jobs. And that points to the main factor in the future education system, the human factor. We are going to live in an era of human improvement, human maintenance, human leisure. Human improvement, lifelong learning, continuously improving our competences and our skills because of the new tools coming in. Human maintenance, we get older. I can prove that human maintenance is going to be important. Look at me. I have a cataract operation. I have an artificial nose where some part of my hip has been transplanted into the nose. I've had an operation with my ears. I'm wearing a hearing aid. I have a knee operation, and I have a stent in my heart. Human maintenance. We actually look at other human beings and make sure that they still can live and have a meaningful life. The third item, human leisure, as we saw with nostalgist rewilding, namely appeal to imagination again. People gets older and they will be wealthier. They have the money. They have the money to pay for leisure, and they want a meaningful life when they're retired. They have the money to pay for human maintenance, and they need the skills. They will still want their computer. They will still want their hand phone. They still want to use these gadgets. And if they don't want, the public sector will come and tell them, you need to. You need improvement. You need lifelong learning, because you can only communicate with the public sector if you are able to manage and handle and tackle your computer and your iPhone. In several countries, it is impossible to file your income tax return unless you do it by online. And of course, you can say that I'm not capable of doing that, so I don't file it. but then you will be punished. So also for those who are not on the workplace, you actually need the human improvement all the time. We'll have to learn to live with the new technology and integrate it in society. But again, we come back to the human factor, the counseling and the coaching, the human factor, those who help us to do it, those who explain an important part of lifelong learning, improvement, competency, skill, actually interacting with other human beings to explain to them how you handle and manage tools, because there are a lot of other human beings that will not be able to do it on their own. And we move into a society where people will work more and more and more in groups. In the old days, where productivity was a question about how much more can one person produce per hour, is out. In the future, it'll be about a question of how much more can a group produce. I'm interested in football. Some of you may also be so. Look at a football team today. I'm particularly interested in English footballs. I think it goes back to 12 years ago, where for the first time, one of the leading English football clubs, it was actually Arsenal Football Club, fielded a team in a game in the Premier League in England where not a single one of the players were an English citizen. They came from France, African countries, Germany, many other countries. Look at the World Championship in football, European Championship. You will not find one single player there who is not in other leagues. The German football team, for example, composed by players from Britain, England, Scotland, France, Italy, Spain. Groups, you put people together, you base yourself on exploiting their various competences to get a comparative advantage. And this is defining the productivity. And unless you have the ability to coach other people, it won't work. And you will have to tell people, you will have to learn people, you will have to keep the technology going by the human context all the time. Otherwise, technology will take control. There was a news about a week ago where some scientists said, life on other planets, of course, but life on other planets may actually be artificial intelligence. Not life as we know it, but artificial intelligence. Now, we don't want that, do we? To avoid that, the human factor must be brought in all the time. Why is education, lifelong learning, so important? If the education system does not get it right, society will face a large number of problems. The first one is obviously that the economy will operate below capacity, because only if we use skills 100% will we get the economy to run at full speed. We don't want what is the economists called an output gap, in the sense that we could actually produce more, but we are not capable of doing it. The other thing is obviously that people with the wrong skills will be unemployed. Unemployment in itself is a very, very bad thing. But it's even worse when those who are unemployed are skilled people, because they realize their situation and they get angry and they say, why did I spend 4, 5, 6, 7 years at an education to get a higher education, a degree telling me that I have competences and skills, to discover when I leave the university that there's no demand, there's no need for those skills. I have a skill, but I can't use it because no one asked for it. So you actually get a very large number of angry people in society threatening to create social instability. It's an enormous waste of money if we do not get it right. We have universities, buildings, laboratories, institutions, professors, teachers, whatever, and they actually take a large share out of the GDP and produce something which is completely useless, namely people with the wrong skills. And the most important one may be we create inequality. Inequality, because those who have the right skills, they will be in demand. There will not be a sufficient number of them. So they will say, we can do it, and they will ask for a premium, a higher wage, and they will get it, which actually means that more and more wealth and more income will be channeled into a comparatively few people, small number of people who are capable of taking a large share of wealth out of society. This is actually one of the main reasons that you can see a growing inequality in the United States. It has nothing to do with many other factors which we read about in the papers. Basically, the main reason is premium of skills. The skills factor become one of the determining issues for distributing of income and wealth. Now, how do we get it right? The education is not a sector in itself. I touched upon it earlier by saying that we will have to see education as a part of society. And primarily, we have to bring in industry to map out the education for the future. One of the most successful countries in the world is, as we all know, Germany. There are many reasons for that. But one of the reasons is that the German education system brings in industry. So industry has actually an important say in what are we going to offer, which skills and competencies are we actually offering to people in the education system. Many of the companies, they have a better idea about future needs, obviously because they can see it coming on the factory floor. They can see the demand for their products. They can test, they know automatically the reaction, the feedback from the consumer. So if they are allowed to feed that into the education system, we actually take a very important step in the direction of tuning the education system into future needs. We must also realize that it takes long time to build a good education system. One thing that I hate about the turn of society in which we live compared to the society I used to know is bang for the bucks now. Now. We need the profit now. We need the benefit now. And if it does not result in a good outcome in 3 or 6 months or whatever it is, we drop it. We need to realize that it takes time. I recall that the latest Danish Nobel Prize laureate, it goes back 10, 12, 15 years, said that if the universities had been running when he started as they are today, he would never have been able to carry out the research that led to the Nobel Prize. Many of the most important things take a very, very, very long time. And we will have to realize that to do that, we will also see waste of money. There will be many products that will not come to a good result. But that is the price we have to pay to get the right. Because we cannot do it right at the first attempt in a very short notice. Education is about meet the challenges and not to perform well-deformed functions. Education is about thinking before you act. How can I actually do it? And that is again why it is for lifelong learning. When I was permanent secretary at the Danish Foreign Ministry, I told the staff, when I ask why we do this thing in this particular way, those who answer, we do it this way because we have always done it this way, will be fired the next day. This is no good answer. You have to ask, why are we doing it? Can't we do it in the other way? What are the explanations for doing it? And if you do that, when tools, technology change, you will also realize that tomorrow you may be able to do it in a better way than how you did it yesterday. What about the learning? How do we tune into that? Learning, basically, if you look at nature, is by watching and observing. This is how nature actually instills learning in its system for animals and for human beings. And in particular, we learn by our mistakes and by watching other people and other people's mistakes. There we learn how not to do it, a trial and error process. Encourage people to try to do it in another way. We must move towards a cocktail of creativity, individualism, and team spirit. Creativity in the sense that we all the time ask ourselves the basic question, can't we do it in another way? Aren't there a better way? Could I try something else? I've been doing this for 5 years. Okay, it works, but maybe there is a better way to do it. So why not try it? Why not be creative? And those who are in charge, they must stimulate creativity to actually tell the people, okay, try to do it in another way. See how it works out. Maybe it's good, and then fine. Maybe it's not good, and then you have eliminated that possibility for the future. Individualism, you will have to appeal to people to actually live up to their own expectations. And team spirit. Team spirit because we live in groups. And in the modern age, in the future, you will share the knowledge. You will need to share the knowledge, productivity in groups. And if you are not aware of the need to share the knowledge, and if you're not willing to do it, what will happen then? Yes, then no one else will share their knowledge with you. So you actually get a society or a learning system or an economy where people sit on their knowledge, do not share it, so it's sleeping knowledge, it's not being used. So the education system has to say, creativity, try something new. Individualism, be aware of your own competences, not in a bad way, but in a good way. And the third one, share it with somebody else to get a higher group productivity. Now teaching, how do we get that right? Teachers should be more like a coach. You will know that in political science, there is a concept called power distance. And it's good with a lower power distance, so you can communicate with those in power. But exactly the same in the teaching system. In the education system, you need a lower power distance, so that the distance between the teacher and the pupil are very small. The student should be encouraged to approach the teacher and say, is that right? Is it really the best way to do it? Couldn't we do it in another way? And not be afraid of approaching the professor. I once heard the remark that you could not criticize, you could not ask a question to a professor, because if you ask the question, you indicated that by needing to ask a question, the professor has not done the job good enough. So a more equal platform, make the playing field more level between the teacher, professor, and the students and the pupil, so that they feel they are the same, let's say, member of the same team. They are sharing competences, experiences, obviously from a different level, but they are sharing it and have a high regard for each other. So sometimes we can even get in the situation that the professor or the teacher can learn from the students. Now, always remember that the objective is to build competences. It's not to build factual knowledge. Factual knowledge nowadays available on databases. That's another problem, because then you must learn how to look for it. how to retrieve it, how to store it, how to categorize it. We all know by Google and other instruments, all the knowledge you need, all the factual knowledge you need is there. Don't bother yourself. Don't take time actually to learn it, because it's there. But use the time to find out how to retrieve it, how to use it, how to combine it. One thing which is essential for the education system in the future is ask the right question. You look for some information, you go on Google, you phrase your question in the wrong way, no answers. You phrase your question in the right way, answers are coming in. So that in itself is becoming a new, let's say, aspect of factual knowledge, to use the databases in the right way. But don't look for the factual knowledge as such, as we used when I was young. When I went to school in the 50s, the question was always, from my first class until I graduated when I was 18 from the school, the question was always about if the 10 men can dig a ditch in 2 hours, 100 meters long, how long time will it take 20 men? A very distinct, single question with one answer. Not nowadays. Nowadays, to combine it, to find out how to do it, don't look for the factual knowledge, the ability to solve problems. Nowadays, when you look for problems, to solve problems, you will not get one answer. You will get many different options. What you should be capable of doing is to choose from these options. Maybe to combine them, but to choose from these options. What are the right ones today, tomorrow, in a month's time? That may not be the right one 6 months ago or 6 months ahead. It's up to you to combine and to choose and to select from the options coming out of the databases, the technology, the tools available of them. And this is again one of the main questions for the education system, to give you all the competence and the skills to choose and combine options and to ask the right questions, not the other way around, not to look for the right answers. Now, the information and communication technology is an incredible instrument, but it also has an element of dehumanization, in the sense that it makes us more, let's say, insensitive to other human beings' feelings, because you don't see them. You communicate with them without seeing them. Again, when I was young, you communicated with a person face to face. You actually read the body language. That was important for you. Today, no body language. An SMS, Facebook, Twitter, or whatever it is coming in, and you don't know actually the person you communicate with. You don't know the background for the answers and the information you pick up on the net and you respond to. You must need to realize that and to move into what I call feed out and feed back. The feed out for the teacher is to reach out to the students and tell them a lot of things, mainly the purpose. What is it the teacher, what is it the professor can do for the students? And the feedback is, of course, is that what the student look for? Is it so that there's congruence, so to speak, between what the professor, the instructor offers and what the students ask for? And that can only be done in a constant dialogue between the professor, the teacher, and the students. Unless you have this dialogue, you actually can get it very, very wrong. And you don't realize that that is the case because they do not communicate in the right way. They may do it by networks, but not in the human contact, telling them how it actually looks from their different perspectives. The future management, which is important when you look at these things, is a choice between command, controlled values. The command system is based upon you tell you do that. And then it is being done regardless of the consequences. If you do it according to command, you're doing things right. The result does not really matter. It is not so important. You just obey the orders. Control is a system where you actually look after, has it been done in the way I said? Have the rules been followed? No good either. The right one is values. You communicate to people what are the values, what do we look for, what's the purpose, what's the idea, how do we actually manage in the society, so that people, by having the right values, or let me say, having common and shared values, react by instinct in the right way when confronted with problems. Low power distance, in the sense that confronted with a problem, you actually have the courage, the confidence to do the right thing and try on your own. You don't have to ask. Just imagine the savings for society that people on the floor have the values, permitting them, guiding them to take immediate action to tackle problems and getting the correct results out of it. Instead of saying, okay, we stop the production process, we go and look for the supervisor, and he or she may not be there, come back 1, 2, 3 hours later and ask, what do we do about that problem? The supervisor will say, I don't know, I have to ask the engineer. So you will have to lose a lot of time, productivity goes down, because you do not operate in a value system where people have been taught how to do things and why do we do it. When I was again permanent secretary in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, I always took great pains to explain to the staff why we do it. When I joined the Danish Foreign Ministry in 1968, you were summoned to the office of the head of department and told, do this. That was the command system. You were never told why and how. And of course, if something changed along the route, you would still act according to the command. If you do it by the value system, and you have explained we do this because the conditions are such and such, the circumstances are such and such, and we're doing it because the objective is there, and we can only reach that objective by doing things like that, then if things change along the road, the staff will be able to adjust, because they know, okay, I was told that the purpose was this, so this means that to get there, we will have to change behavior. So they can do it by their own, and that is an enormous challenge for the education system, but indispensable if we want to get it right in the future. We need to realize what I call the core functions, the core business, to tell people that, look, ask, what kind of business are you actually in? Not necessarily in economic life, but what is the basic activity? What are we doing? What is the purpose of what we are doing? The core value added. How can we actually make the product preferable for the consumer? Why do the consumer prefer this? The next one is the core message. Crucial importance in the communication society that you actually communicate. You actually think about what is it actually we want to communicate to other people? How do we want them to see our own, let's say, institution or our own business or whatever it is? The core working methods. Why do we do things the way we do? Never say we do them in this way because we always used to do it this way. But explain that we do it this way because it's the most efficient one. We are saving waste. It's in conformity with environmental standards. We contribute to the endeavors to reduce global warming or whatever it is. And the core need, what is the underlying demand we satisfy? Most people will say a fridge is an instrument to keep things cool. Wrong. A fridge is a tool or an instrument to preserve food. At the very moment you get another technology, the fridge is out. So think about what is the basic need behind it. Think about, again, the human being. One of the most, again, crucial tasks for the education system, the lifelong learning, looking at people, is autonomy, mastery, purpose. Autonomy, you come back to the values. You act on your own. You have the courage, you have the confidence, thanks to my wife. You have the confidence to act. You believe in yourself. And when you do that, you are creative. You tackle it in the right way. You think about what to do it, how to do it. And in the back of your brain, you have the idea that if I do it the right way, it's successful because I'm good, I can do it. Look again at the soccer world, the sports world. The top stars there, they do things because they have confidence, autonomy. They have been taught by life experience, education system, to believe in themselves. So they dare do things which more timid people would not dare to do. There are a lot of examples from the business world where a company says, well, look, for the next 3 days, we don't want you to come to work. Stay at home. Do whatever you like. We do not ask you for a report, but when you come back to the office 3 days later, you must have created something useful for the company. You must have found out how to do things differently. You must have thought about a new product. Again and again and again and again, the feedback is, this is successful. Because people like to work on their own if they have the confidence. The second one is mastery. Be proud of yourself. Whatever you do, realize that this is good because I've been doing it. I don't want to make a lousy product. I want people to say, Mr. X or Mrs. Y have done it, so it's good. Mastery, being complete control of your own profession, at the top of your own profession, according to the competencies and the skills you have. People are different. So you work in a profession and people's competencies are different because they are different. But they must be on top of the box inside their own competencies. And the purpose, I have touched upon that, but I reiterate it here. Know what you're doing, why you're doing it, where you go, what is the idea, what is the purpose. I can tell you that when I teach at Singapore Management University and sometimes also at Copenhagen Business School, I know exactly what the purpose of my teaching is. My teaching, the purpose of my teaching is to shape human beings. It's not to teach competences of factual knowledge. It's to shape human beings that can work with creativity, individualism, teamwork, interactive. When I start my semester at Singapore Management University, I always say to my students, and of course all of them come from Asia, I always say to them, when you say something, you can be 100% certain that the next 2 words you would hear from me is why and how. You must always be able to argue for what you say and explain why you take that particular point of view. And you will be graded according to how well you can do that, irrespective of whether you disagree with the textbook and me. But if you give me the answer in the textbook without being able to argue for it, you'll get a low grade. So the purpose of this, in our world, shape human beings that can interact with each other. The things I've talked about, group productivity, human contacts, make people happy, comfortable, at ease with each other so that they can share the knowledge and by so doing make sure that we operate at a full capacity in society. Interdisciplinary approach is coming into the era now because of the fast changes in society. The silo thinking out, now it's about combining, putting things together, see how they can work in different contexts. Go back to the football team. Okay, let's try another right wing, let's try another striker, let's try another goalkeeper. Let's try to tinker with the system a little bit so that we can see how it can actually be better. And the interdisciplinary approach is becoming so important today because changes means that we cannot cope with only the knowledge from one sector. I'm an economist myself. The science of economics have completely failed. First of all, it failed to explain the global financial crisis, and when it happened anyway, it failed to tell how to deal with it. But the economic science is still the same. The economists have not changed. It's a silo thinking. You get a Nobel Prize for elaborating on a model which is completely useless, but it fulfills some criteria. You should move into the era where you actually combine things, interdisciplinary, intersexual, complexity things, which actually makes it so that, again, you come back to ask the questions. Do not be content with knowing the answers, because they may be wrong. So find out by the questions what the options, the possibilities, the opportunities are, and then it's your job on the basis of your competence to put them together to find the solution that is the best one now. And that can only be done by complexity, by combination of flexibility and malleability in society and in yourself and in your group. Pedagogy becomes extremely important when you deal with persons and people today, because the technology makes it so open courseware and whatever it is, that more and more and more it is the same curriculum, the same textbook all over the world. Obviously, the tools, the technology makes it possible for us to select that. And that means that it will be narrowed down to a limited number of books and textbooks. So what distinguishes, what makes the education systems different from one another? The pedagogic, how you actually get the feed out, the feedback, how you get a low power distance between the teacher and the students, how to make the playing field level, how do we actually get it so that they can learn from each other and they can increase each other's possibilities. They can make it so that the student will be prepared to adapt, to change, to adjust, and run the risk, build up the confidence in the students to autonomy, mastery, purpose. They are willing to try something new because they believe in themselves, and they have been taught that by pedagogic methods, actually using the human contact, the human elements among people to enhance the competences in, let's call it, a soft way. The conclusion of all this is that the keys to master and survive in the changing world is the teacher-student relationship. Unless you come out from the education system from a very good teacher-student relationship with mutual respect, you won't be able to adapt and survive in the future. Pedagogy, how to learn, how to teach, it's both sides. It's not only the professor, it's also the students, to bring the students in. Constant upgrading, lifelong learning from you are in the kindergarten till you die. Every time, because in the future there may still be need for old people, and you may still be called upon to provide competences and do something for society. Creativity, by asking the questions all the time, why and how. Only if you do that, open your mindset to new solutions, will you be able to survive. And factual knowledge, still important, but not knowing the factual knowledge, but knowing how to retrieve it, how to store it, how to use it. A completely different context we're going to live in. I actually look forward to it, and I hope that I still have some years, and if we say that I'm 62 instead of 72, my wife may actually have done me the confidence and the courage to move into the future. Thank you very much for your attention.